What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone is having a fantastic night so far. We're going to have an amazing show with some great guests. We got some diehard Michigan State fans. They've named their children, their pets, after greats such as Magic Johnson, Tom Izzo, Dan Enos. Yeah, I threw Dan Enos out there. Gotta represent East Lansing. You guys obviously know that my co-host Ross. We got the Stu cast. His alma mater is Michigan State, and we have a very special guest as well, Justin Spiro. Welcome to the Scoop, Justin. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me. It is Spiro, so just so
Spiro.
you're right, because he's like the
Love
vice
it.
president. So don't worry, you're the 373rd person this week to go with Spiro. So it's good to be here. And the Stu Cast, man, that guy's great, and he said the best things about you guys. So I'm pumped. I'm ready. Big game on Saturday. I can't wait for it.
I greatly appreciate you coming on, Justin, Stu. On our end, this is the biggest game, in my opinion, of Manny Diaz's tenure. Ross is shaking his head. He's agreeing. This is a must-win game for Miami. Unfortunately, it's very rare in the past 18 years for Miami to win non-conference games. Our last one at home was 2017 against Notre Dame. And then before that, I believe it was an away game at Texas A&M. Oh, wait, never mind. Probably was against Oklahoma at home. But it doesn't come often. So this is a huge game. Justin, what does Mel Tucker bring to the table 2 games into year 2? What have you seen so far from the 2021 Michigan State Spartans?
More than I expected, really. I mean, for the record, I picked him to win both games going into them, so I'm not shocked at 2-0. I am shocked at what 2-0 has looked like. I figured Northwestern would be an ugly win. It really wasn't. I mean, the score, it honestly looked better than it even was for Northwestern. Michigan State dominated that game literally from the first play, scoring on a 75-yard touchdown run from their running back, Kenneth Walker. So I just their thorough domination. And Youngstown State, I mean, it's D2 or, FCS. You expect to win. But believe me, I don't know what your guys' experience has been. I've seen a lot of Mark D'Antonio teams over the years be up like 10-3 against these teams at halftime, and then they win 20-6 or whatever. Like just from the jump, domination was good to see too. So 2-0 was expected, at least for me, but the way it's looked, I've been very impressed, and it's a great running attack, and the receiving room is as good as any in the Big Ten other than Ohio State. So there's a lot there to like for sure.
Stu, I mean, you're another big Michigan State fan. We were talking before. Only 2 games in, you weren't really trying to get your hopes up, but I think they're doing a good job. They're 2-0. They beat a good Northwestern football team last year. They were underdogs week 1. They beat them again. Youngstown State, is Bo Pelini still the head coach there? They have a solid traditional program that people are aware of, but hey, they're still Division 2, whatever you want to call it, FCS opponent. They got the job done. They won. What do you think so far?
Well, I'm going to share Justin's sentiments and go check out Justin's channel on YouTube. He's got interesting guests. Need to get Scott Bernstein on there again. But, Michigan State, I think me and him agree. We want 6 wins. We're just hoping we're building a program. We kicked out 20 kids, didn't kick them out, but Mel kind of was like, hey, here's the door. You probably won't have a spot here. And they went to MAC schools and D2 schools and Northern Iowa, whatever. They left. He brought in real talent. And I think you're seeing that pay off. This is a much more talented team with a more aggressive playbook than what you've seen in the past. It's all predicated on the run game because I think our quarterback, Peyton Thorne, while he's got flashes, and you saw it last year against Penn State. You saw it last week against Youngstown State, making some throws. He's still learning, and he needs help. I will say he is better than Chase Bryce, so you've got that to contend with. But I'm really excited to see what this team is, because for us, we look at this as, okay, how good's the team? Because we respect Miami. Right. We respect it. Like Miami is a good football team. Miami is an 8-9 win team in our eyes. And I don't know, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's where I stand too. I never thought they were going to be 10 plus wins this year, but 8 or 9 wins was sort of the worst I really saw them landing, which is suddenly tough to get to if they start 1-2 with a eking out a win. But yeah, that's another story.
Ross, what are your thoughts about this game?
Well, we talked to these guys just briefly here before we started, and the run game is really something that everyone kind of agreed on that is a strength for Michigan State. It simply hasn't been something that we've been able to stop consistently at Miami so far. We saw what the App State guys did, a group of 5 team coming in with a power runner, Cameron Peoples, right up the gut, finding success over and over. The Michigan State running back from Wake Forest, his last name Walker, yeah?
Yeah, Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker, yeah. He's got some of these kind of qualities that can beat you on the inside and outside. And I want to say, he didn't play much last week, but in the game against Northwestern, didn't he average something about 11 yards per carry?
Yeah, it was like 11.8. He had 264 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. And honestly, like they kind of load management him a little bit there to make that into a verb. Like he had a fair like 25 carries, but they really took the foot off the accelerator there. I mean, he could have run easily for 300 plus. He was just out of control.
Now, what's the backup running back? Is that Simmons?
I reject the term. There's no. I mean, Jordan Simmons. Yeah, they have a rotation. Michigan State's backfield is really good. Jordan Simmons had 16 carries last week. The next closest was Kenneth Walker at 7. So I mean, Simmons had more than double anybody. I think you're going to see this all year long. It's going to be like the old Mike Shanahan Broncos. Belichick had this to a lesser extent, where it's like you'll have 6 different leading rushers. That may be a little much, but 4 or 5 leading rushers throughout the course of the year. I think it'll be a little different. I mean, D'Antonio here at Michigan State always had a stable, but there was always one guy that 9 games out of 10 is going to have the most carries and the most run. I don't think that's going to happen. As good as Walker is, I think you're going to see a lot of Jordan Simmons. Elijah Collins is kind of banged up. He was a guy that ran for almost 1,000 yards as a freshman 2 years ago. But if he's good to go, he'll play and run too. So, I mean, we'll see. But, yeah, it's a good room for sure.
Hey, don't forget about my guy, Harold Joyner, who is going to be used in that running back role. He's a 6'4", 230 kid, transferred from Auburn. He wasn't getting any play for Malzahn, 4-star, borderline 5-star recruit out of Alabama. And the kid, he got a little banged up. I don't know what his health situation is for Miami, but I've heard in talking to some of Michigan State folks that like they're going to use him very aggressively in that slot role, that Z role, RJ Shelton type for Justin. And, I think that's a guy that could be an X factor offensively.
So it seems like you guys are going to be running the football heavily against Miami.
Yep.
Yeah. And you're going to see a lot of Thorne running too. I mean, our quarterback, Peyton Thorne, this is the thing I'm really interested to see because I think Miami, I think your guys' pass rush, I know you only have, I think it was like 3 sacks so far this year, but your quarterback pressures in the small sample size of 2 games are pretty good. Like you're getting in guys' faces. Sacks are wonderful, but they're not the end-all be-all. Quarterback pressures, hitting guys, you can disrupt the timing of every play if you do that regularly. That is so valuable. Miami has been, despite some flaws early on, good at that. Peyton Thorne has looked mighty fine, but he's also had all day to throw in both games. I mean, no pressure. Some mild pressure in the Northwestern game. He stepped up, made some nice plays, but at no point did he seem like he was under any duress. Even last year in his smaller sample size, mostly was well protected. When he was rushed, he didn't look nearly as good. Obviously, that's most guys, but even relative to that. So if Miami's pass rush gets in his face, the run game, it better be hitting because I don't know. We have not seen Thorne step up against a heavy pass rush yet. I hope it happens, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm curious about, our run defense. Your pass rush is very key. We only had 1 sack against App State, which in my opinion is not good. You're going up against a G5 program. I understand they've had 9 wins consistently since 2016, but Miami's defensive line has been really good, and it's prided itself at being a very, aggressive and elite defensive line. You lost, 2 NFL draft picks, a first rounder with Rousseau in 2019, but, they got to step up. And we also have lost Keontre Smith for estimated wise a month. And that's one of our starting linebackers. And our linebacker core right now is fairly weak. So this is going to be an interesting game. If Michigan State has success running the football, it's going to be a long day for Miami. Stu, tell me more about Peyton Thorne. What kind of quarterback? I understand he's mobile. What else does he bring to the table? Is he your prototypical just game manager?
No, I mean, I think Peyton, they trust him and he feels confident enough to throw the deep ball. And that's something that we, as Michigan State fans, we it's been a while. Sad to say, it's been a while since we had a quarterback like that. He's got a great relationship with our number one wide receiver. Went to high school with him, Jaden Reed. He's a kid, a freshman All-American out of Western Michigan. Took the first play, 75 yards against Youngstown State last week. I think Peyton has really developed a great feel with Reed and Trey Mosley, our third wideout technically, if we're gonna slot him. I think he's still trying to put something together with Jalen Naylor, our number two. But I think last year was more of, just grip it and rip it. He's a guy that's been battle tested, I think. He came in against Ohio State and had to move the ball, and he did have some success in the second half of that game. Came in against Penn State. We were up in Happy Valley by 14 at half. This year, you've seen some maturation, some progress, and I think this is going to be a really great test for him. But in the long run, I think a game like this helps him, progress as a quarterback. I think he's more talented than Chase Bryce. He doesn't rely on the play action, and the wide receivers are going to be able to actually catch the ball, which is something that almost doomed you guys last week. So offensively, with Peyton at the helm, they're going to take some deep shots. They're going to rely on running the ball. And I think he is, to a certain extent, a game manager in that he's not going to make a really stupid throw. He's not going to, just get colorblind and forget where he's at, what team he's playing for. I think you're going up against probably a much better offense than App State.
Ross, I know you've been doing a lot of studying on Michigan State. Do you see defensively versus their offense any advantages Miami has or any complete mismatches?
Nothing that really stands out right away, honestly. We have the athletes to compete with anybody in the nation. We definitely have the athletes to compete with Michigan State. Do we have the coaching? That's where it comes down to. Yeah. Are the coaches going to be allowed to coach? Is T-Rob going to be allowed to update the secondary for us? Those kind of things we haven't seen yet. Michigan is a very well-coached team, very well-coached on both sides of the ball already this season as well, and where it matters in the trenches, and the offensive line's been great too so far. This is going to be a problem for us on defense if we simply cannot get to the quarterback. If we can't get any type of pressure back there, and like Justin said, it not necessarily has to be sacks, but getting the right kind of pressure at the right time. That will be absolutely vital, because if we don't, that's making Thorne's job really easy, and we've seen that when his job's easy, he can pick apart a defense pretty well.
Absolutely. No, I 110% agree. I mean, Michigan State coaching staff.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I love Mel Tucker. I think he's an outstanding head coach. He's an outstanding head coach. I wish he was at Miami, to be honest, but we have Manny Diaz, and once again, this is the biggest game in his coaching career. So whatever happens, happens. Justin, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so used to my show where it's like stuff just flying around all over the place. But just to piggyback what you were saying, like I could look at nothing else. If you had to like put blinders on and I could only see the line of scrimmage for 15 plays, I think I could tell you who wins the game. If Miami's getting push up front and getting into the backfield, I think Michigan State's in deep shit. I'm not saying again that Peyton Thorne can't do it. He couldn't do it last year, and he hasn't needed to do it yet this year. Until I see somebody do something, I'm not going to have faith that he can put in that situation. Thorne was in a rough spot last year as a redshirt freshman, was not expected to play at all year, ended up pushed into action. Yes, he had a nice moment against Penn State. He also looked horrible in a shutout loss to Indiana. He was flailing, looked very uncomfortable in the pocket. So I don't know. I mean, if you just tell me who wins the line of scrimmage in the first half, I mean, I'll tell you who wins, but I mean, of course, we don't know that. It'll be interesting because Thorne will be faced with something that he has not seen this year in terms of a real pass rush, and that he faltered in that situation last year. So I'm intrigued to see it.
No, I 110% agree. And Stu, how is that Michigan State offensive line? Do you think, because you've been watching a lot of Miami Hurricanes football, do you think they can win this battle?
Coming into the season, I would have said probably yeah. I think it's going to be pretty even. Michigan State was able to do something really big in the offseason, getting a left tackle and Jarrett Horst out of Arkansas State. Now, this guy, he was all Sun Belt player, and that may not sound like anything big, but this is a kid that's a big boy. He's grading out exceptionally well, but it also allows them to move their right tackle from last year, Kevin Jarvis, back to his natural position of right guard. And you've seen this offensive line just gel together. We're not playing 8-9 different lines in a game. We're not rotating every other drive. This offensive line can get push, and they can protect decently so far. And I think Miami, they will win some of these battles. You got talent. You got talent. That's the one thing Miami has over Michigan State. But I think it's going to be interesting. We don't know. We still don't know what our Michigan State team is. We're still hoping, and that I see some of the comments from folks. It's like, look, we just want to get to a bowl game this year. We're building a program.
Year 2.
Yeah, this is year. Well, I would say year 1. Justin, correct me if I'm wrong. This is year 1. Last year, we had a coach step in. His first day on the job was like 2 days before the shutdown. And it's
look, even if COVID never happens, Mel Tucker had a huge disadvantage coming in after signing day, coming in 2 months later than the average coach coming into a new program. So he was, before COVID even happened, a little bit behind the 8 ball relative to other new coaches in the country. And then obviously COVID happened. And yes, 2 days before, the guy didn't have an offseason. They were wearing name tags. Hi, my name is Colton on the first day of practice before, when they resumed in August. No one knew who anyone even was. They're meeting each other on Zoom. So yeah, I consider it year 1 really, or year 1.5. It is interesting to have this conversation because I think I know what the line is. It's 6.5. Miami's probably a rightful favorite, certainly being at home. But like the fan base seems to think it's kind of a toss up. I mean, it's going to be a 1-score game either way. And Miami, it's like you guys have this sense of we better win. And Michigan State is more like, hey, it's going to be sunny. It'll be fun. It's a good test for us. If we lose, no problem. Like we want to win, we care. But it is interesting to see. We're looking at it at completely different lenses.
All right. Well, look, it's a 6.5 point spread. I think it started off at 8.5 points. I have no idea how this game is going to go. I think Vegas even has it at a toss-up as well, but it's only a 6.5 spread. Stu's the betting expert, so I'll leave that to him. But
I got it at 8.5.
You got it at 8. Okay, I thought it went to 6.5.
Well, I bet Sunday after.
Oh, okay. So. Okay, fair. Let's switch over to the defensive side of the football. Ross, evaluating their defense, who sticks out to you so far?
The guy who sticks out to me on film immediately is safety Xavier Henderson. I mean, he is kind of the guy who seems to be in the middle of a lot of what they're doing. He seems to rack up quite a few tackles, and we know how important that can be to have that on the back end of a defense because we've frankly seen it at Miami, and we've seen it not be that way at times. And it makes things really tough, especially when a running back or wide receiver actually gets to that second level and gets a little bit of room. This is actually there's 2 of them. Angelo Gross, I believe, is that the other safety? He doesn't look that bad either from what I saw. He seems to be a guy who can get tackles. What I really like to see, though, from these guys is the linebacking core. They've got a young linebacker, Cal Halliday. He stood out to me on film. I was surprised to find out he was a redshirt freshman. Stu, is this a guy that you were expecting to have a role this year?
No, absolutely not. This is a D'Antonio diamond in the rough kind of kid, 2 stars from BFE, Northern Michigan, a place with no cell reception ever, right? This kid is flying around, to your point, though, Ross, and he's really proven himself. I'll say he looks really good. There's a little bit more rotational depth linebacker wise, but it's really Quavaris Crouch is he runs the playbook for this defense. And, you're talking about a kid who coming from Tennessee was begging him to stay. He's an all SEC kid. He's going to be a monster for us going forward, but he's the real head of the defense, and playing that 4-2-5, these guys fly to the ball. So Xavier Henderson, though, to your point, really, I think, an underrated guy and might end up being in that Kari Willis role down the road with how good he is, and we see what Kari's doing for the Colts.
Justin, what about the cornerbacks for Michigan State? How do you guys feel about that unit against Miami?
It's an area of concern for me, honestly. I mean, I told you my area of concern on offense when Michigan State has the ball with the offensive line, and how Thorne handles it. The other side of the ball, I have concerns about the secondary. Honestly, Northwestern, I think, is a complete folly. I think they weren't ranked coming into the year, but they were thought to be a pretty good team. I think they were highly overrated by the people in the Midwest that were analyzing this stuff. I'm not a believer in them. And they hit some big shots. Michigan State dominated, but they hit some big shots. They had some success going over the top, and they don't have a good quarterback, and they don't have good weapons. So, I got to tell you, Miami's got a better quarterback and offensive attack than Northwestern did. And if Northwestern could hit some, I do have some real concerns. I don't think it's a bad unit. I don't think it's going to be like the Lamar Jackson Louisville teams that, had to win 65-62, but it is a unit with some vulnerabilities. And I think, King is going to be a problem for them. I think it's almost a lock. You're going to see 2 or 3 30-plus yard plays, through the air for that offense for Miami this week. So it's just a matter of, if you can limit the damage, maybe hold them to a field goal when it does happen. We'll see, but they're going to get theirs. I really believe that.
And to piggyback on that, the reason why I think part of that is look, we just can't generate pressure. We're struggling generating pressure. Now we get Drew Breesley back this week, and Jordan is back this week. But our D line is we don't have that edge rusher. We don't have. When Michigan State was good, a William Golston, a Shalik Calhoun, Malik McDowell, we had these guys that could get off the edge and be disruptive. We don't really have that. So I think De'Eric, just like I said, App State, we have a better offense than them. App State probably has a better defense than what we're bringing in to Coral Gables or Miami or wherever the hell Hard Rock is. So I think in that sense, De'Eric, this is really if Rhett doesn't put it together this week for y'all, hey, thumbs up, get the pitchforks out, because this sets up for every De'Eric to, if he wants to sit back and throw, he can. If he wants to get out and run, he might have some opportunities too. I expect Miami, like Justin said, to get a couple big plays now.
So this is expectation. Seems like an offensive shootout, if anything. Michigan State's going to have a good offense. Miami's going to have a good offense. And whoever plays the better defense should win, right?
Yep, pretty much. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I see the game going over. It depends on your definition of shootout. But, yeah, I think it'll outpace the Vegas over-under. I think I'm going over for the game for sure.
How many sacks do you think Michigan State even gets? Or if Miami gives up, that's a red flag in this game? I'm curious.
If Michigan State gets 2 or more sacks, I'm having concerns if I'm Miami. Honestly, that to me, anything over 1.5.
Okay. I'm going to keep track of that, because if our O-line is honestly, our first team is just subpar. It's not good.
With the sack thing, I think it depends on who it's coming from, because right now we're not getting pressure unless we bring a blitz. Xavier Henderson, our safety, is leading the team in sacks. Okay, so that's a concern on our end. We're not generating pressure unless we bring a blitz. So I think really looking at who's getting the sacks is going to be the real determining factor. And like Justin said, if you're giving up 2 or more to our D line alone, that's an issue.
Ross, I mean, they're talking about their defense having trouble applying pressure. They have a great safety in Henderson. I mean, how do you think Rhett Lashley attacks this game for Miami?
This is going to be tough for the simple fact that this is a fairly strong secondary overall and a good linebacking core, and you know what that can do with the proper coaching. While you might not always be able to get the pressure up front you want, you can manipulate the defense, and which will manipulate the offense for you how you choose to if you do it properly. I agree with these guys. They don't necessarily have the dominant defensive ends they used to have. That's something that we have to truly take advantage of at Miami this year. We have to have our ends actually hold it down on both sides of the ball. Left tackle, left side in general, hasn't been as bad as the right side. We have seen some major issues at Miami on the right side. And I guess one of the big things that I really, really, really got to see from this overall is that man-to-man, eye-to-eye, lined up in the trenches and beating that Michigan State run game, finding a way somehow to slow Walker down. Because if we don't, and we make it easy on Thorne, we've seen what happens.
110% agree. Justin, anything else you wanted to add to your defense that we did not cover?
I think we got it. I agree with the Stewcast, man. Crouch is a hell of a linebacker. I like our linebacking core. The rest is TBD.
Do you think Miami should, emphasize a deep ball game against your secondary? Do you think that speed has an edge with your corners?
I would. I mean, if Northwestern was hitting, I would. The secondary got beaten like a drum last year, and a lot of these same guys are back there. I would make them prove that they could stop it. I think they can win, one-on-one battles. I think, Xavier Henderson is brought over to help these corners a lot out of necessity. So I think you got to take those shots. And, I know King hasn't looked like a world beater yet. I still think he's a hell of a quarterback. I think he's a lot better than what we've seen in the first 2 weeks. I think State's got problems. I mean, I'm picking Miami to win a really tight game. That's kind of where I land here.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Justin threw out his score prediction. We'll get into numbers soon. Interesting, Justin. Okay. You got Miami winning in a tight game. Okay. I wanted to talk about this conversation, this discussion, because I know Stu had his perspective. Even Justin threw out a little bit about it. Me and Ross have our opinions about the importance of this game for Coach Manny Diaz. He's going into game 3. I think he's lost the alumni. The fan base is very upset at him, the heavy majority. Ross, I'll take it to you first. How big of a game is this for Manny Diaz?
It's everything that he needs to prove that he hasn't been able to prove. It's literally everything. Even as his time as a defensive coordinator wasn't necessarily littered with success against national brands from outside of the conference. Michigan State, regardless of whatever process they're in, this is a legit Power 5 team with a national brand. And I think people might have forgot about that a little bit with some of the stuff that's gone on and with the possible rebuild. This is a quality football team, and it's going to be yearly. They are a competitive team, and when you have a coach like Mel Tucker, he will find ways to compete, and he'll find ways to make some of his weaknesses not be so glaring. I really like what they've done. The defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, I got to say I've been a fan so far of what they've done on both sides of the ball.
Stu, before you came on this show, you had your opinion on Manny Diaz being on the hot seat. You're a Manny Diaz fanatic. You love the guy. You love Jalen Milroe and Manny Diaz.
Yeah, apparently.
That's a weird combo. That is a very weird combo. But what's your perspective, Manny Diaz, going into Game 3, Michigan State? Do you think this is a must-win game for him as well?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like reading the tea leaves between you guys and watching the shows and reading Kane's Twitter. It really sounds like, there's a full-on revolt if you lose this game. And to a certain extent, I don't blame you, but I think Miami has to figure out. I'm always about giving, and I said this in the offseason, I'm always about giving a coach 4 or 5 years, and then you can make that determination. 4 or 5 years, and then we can play merry-go-round with the coaching staff and see what's going on. I like what he's done in the offseason with the coaching staff, except for Shoop. I like what he's doing on the recruiting trail. I don't like him being a DC. I don't think we're seeing some progression. I don't really see the talent rising above what we've gotten them in at. Kind of reminiscent of a Lee Harvey Oswald lookalike in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That scares me. That scares me if I'm a Miami fan. So I get it, but you don't want to go into this thing without a plan. Look at USC. They're calling Bill O'Brien. They're calling Sark. They're calling everybody and their brother. Calling James Franklin. Trying to call anybody to immediately get a coach in that can, so they don't lose their recruiting class, so they don't have to take a step back. If Miami is going to drop a coach who has had a winning record, because I'm going to assume Miami gets a winning record at the end of this year.
I would hope so.
Worst case scenario, maybe 8 wins. I think this team is really talented. And you want to get rid of him. You're going to have a hard time convincing a coach that, like, oh, you just fired a dude that just had 3 straight winning seasons? And really, you got to get competitive, because we saw the last coaching cycle, the best guys are going for big-time bucks, and they're asking for big-time stuff. When Mel Tucker came to Michigan State, for instance, it was $5.5 million. It was another $1 million for assistants. It's a private jet. There's money that's really extended here. And I think you made the comment to me before, Paul, that at Manny Diaz, we stole him from Temple. You know, we outbid Temple for him. So I think there's that thing. If you're going to do it, God bless you. I get it. But you got to be prepared to understand who you're going to go after. There has to be a game plan. And to be honest, I don't know that I trust the athletic department at Miami to do the right stuff and be cutthroat killers about going out and getting folks.
All right. Well said, Stu. You said your part. Justin, do you think Miami Hurricanes fans are crazy to want to get rid of Manny Diaz if they lose the game noon at Hard Rock Stadium against, like you guys said previously, really Mel Tucker going in his first year, and you lose to him at home?
I mean, I think it's a little crazy. I mean, if this, you got to see how the rest of the year goes. Like, I mean, if they have a 3-win season, fine. If you're Miami, you have to ask yourself, what do you want? I mean, since Larry Coker left and was replaced by Randy Shannon, so we're talking 07 now, this would be, assuming you fire Diaz, you blow him out and you replace him, not including interim coaches, this will be your 5th head coach since 07. Like, that's not good. You do not want to be averaging a new coach every 2.8 years. Like, that's not good. So I don't know how you want to keep spinning this wheel. I think Florida State might end up in a similar situation here pretty soon, where they're just every 2-3 years cranking out a new coach. It would have to look pretty ugly for Manny Diaz for me to blow him out of there. But certainly I would not even consider that a rational take, because of a loss to Michigan State. But at the same time, I'm not going to come down on those fans, because I've said some crazy shit after a loss or stuff. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this thing, but it's crazy stuff after a bad loss. So I'm not going to knock those people, but objectively, like from the outside, I think that's a little nuts.
I wanted to ask a question too, because I think a lot of it is dependent on what you think Derek King's health status is. We're seeing the same thing play out in Indiana, and Michael Penix does not look like the Michael Penix we saw last year. And Derek, as much as I respect him as a quarterback, and I've made that clear and apparent, he ain't the same guy. I heard a local radio host in Detroit say he doesn't grip it and rip it anymore. He went from John Daly to, I don't know, the local golf pro, right? In some sense. I don't know if that's a Rhett Lashley thing. I don't know if he's a little bit more scared or a little bit more hesitant. I'll say hesitant, not scared. Hesitant to get outside the pocket and run. But it's a difference from this year and last year coming off that ACL. I don't know what your guys' take on it.
All right. Well, we're 90 people watching us live. We greatly appreciate your support. 36 minutes in. Once again, man, we are humbled and grateful for you guys taking time out of your night to watch us talk some Miami, Michigan State. preview, breakdown, matchup, whatever you want to call it. Ross, you got a couple questions for our fine guests. Get after it.
Yeah, this is a question for both you guys, and Justin, feel free to answer it first if you want to. Okay, scenario here, hypothetical scenario. All right, fourth quarter arises it's the first snap of the fourth quarter. Michigan State has the ball, and they're down by 10 on their own 35-yard line. What do we see from that offense?
Oh boy. I mean, I think that at that point you're still gonna stick to your game plan and run the ball. I mean, the running game is so good. If you're saying beginning of the fourth quarter, 10 points, I mean, that's a ton of time. So I don't think you would see any panic really. Mel Tucker might be the most chill guy on the planet. Like, he's fiery in the locker room. The guy, I think, is a corpse if you get him outside of the locker room. Like, and I mean it in a good way. Like, I like how boring he is. It's a good thing. But yeah, they're not going to be pacing the sidelines, panicking in that situation. I really don't believe that. So I think you'd see exactly what you were seeing in the first couple of quarters generally. I mean, unless they had to make some huge deviation because something wasn't working. But they're not going to be panicking at that point.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with them. I think that you may see a little bit more trickiness out of Michigan State too. We saw them last week. They running flea flickers against Youngstown State at one point. I think you're going to see some out of the box kind of plays should we get down in that position. I think you'll see it regardless, because for us, it's if he wins this game, if Mel wins this game, it's a big program accomplishment, right? So it's kind of house money. And I don't know, are you guys running it back next year? Did the game get rescheduled for the return?
I hope not, because we play Clemson and Texas A&M next year. I think they're both away games, so I really hope not.
Yeah, because I was going to say my take would be
schedule.
very different on next year, Miami.
Especially away in East Lansing. That would be awful, because we have to play Texas A&M away, I think. So that would be awful.
I do hope that game gets rescheduled. We'll take you out to the dairy store, Paul.
Cannot wait to visit the dairy store. Cannot wait.
It's good ice cream.
I'm sure it is. Thank you.
With your guys' run game being consistent so far and the offensive line blocking really well, how's the play action pass game been for you guys? Have you seen success there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been heavily featured. I think that's what Thorne is kind of meant for and built for anyway. He's so mobile, not like a burner straight line speed, but great feet, shiftiness in the pocket, moves his feet well, reads those quarterback reads well. So we'll see against a better defense. I mean, it cannot be emphasized enough. Northwestern had like 9 of their 11 defensive starters gone, and Youngstown State is Youngstown State. So we don't know, but I think you'll see a lot of play action, and they're going to be playing off that run game for sure, especially, any success early on the ground sets that up so well. And the Michigan State we've talked about the running backs to death, and I get it. That's definitely fair, and that's been what we've seen. That wide receiver group is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I honestly think it is the second best in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. I think Michigan
Maryland.
I'm telling you, watch. I mean, okay. I don't have to tell you. These other guys don't know what you and I. Well, you and I can have a debate separately.
Offline, you're going to get a mean text.
Jaden Reed is unbelievable. I think he is as good as anybody outside of Columbus. I don't care what anybody says. As a college receiver, I'm not talking about Mel Kiper pro stuff here. As a college receiver, is as good as it gets outside of Ohio State. I mean, whatever. If you want to nitpick on Maryland, the point is these receivers are really good, and the running game has stolen the show for sure. But, I don't know much about your guys' secondary, but if it's not a good secondary, they're going to have problems too.
What I've noticed about Reed, and you talking about how good a receiver he is, he doesn't need to have 8 or 9 receptions to be dominant. He is very efficient. If you get the right 4 or 5 receptions, you're talking about maybe breaking off 2 touchdowns. You're talking about breaking off over 100 yards possibly. We've already seen it happen this year on limited touches. So if you guys find a way to really get him involved even more in cooking, I'll tell you what, it will be an absolute nightmare for our secondary, because we've just simply had problems covering it's nothing new. We've had problems covering for a while.
I would say that Michigan State's wide receiving core has probably 3 guys better, or I would say maybe Trey Mosley is about as good in my mind as Cortland Sutton, who was App State's main go-to guy.
Yeah.
Just in what I've seen, my assessment. The player rankings out there on PFF may disagree, but I think you're going to get a lot more depth.
All right. Well, we're at the final part of our show. Let's talk about the score predictions. Justin, you gave us a little preview. What's your score prediction of the game, Miami versus Michigan State at noon, Hard Rock Stadium?
I feel bad, but I got to give you my honest opinion. I think it's like 34-30 or 34-31 Miami. The only thing I'll say, so much of college football is timing, especially with college football. We're all amateur psychologists trying to think, how is the team going to respond to the previous week or rebound. Michigan State was notorious my entire life for being horrible at this. We'd start out 4-0, lose to Michigan, and then we'd not win another game. Like, whatever we think about the teams in a vacuum, I think the spot emotionally is clearly better for Michigan State. I mean, they're off to a better start. They've had to exert really nothing in their first couple games. I mean, Youngstown State, they were pedal off the metal. It was a relaxing effort. Northwestern was a blowout. I don't know. I like a lot of what we've seen from them. Miami's had a lot of high stress. It's been high stress for Miami in both games. Alabama kicked them in the teeth. Obviously, the aforementioned issues with App State. Michigan State's been kind of on cruise control. I just feel like they're in a better spot where they're not on this emotional high of escaping App State and facing Bama and all the heat that came with that. So I am picking Miami, but if I were a Miami fan, I'm a little concerned about the spot emotionally.
Stu?
I'm not copying, I swear to God. I'm going 34-30 Miami. A lot of the same reasoning. I think at the end of the day, De'Aaron King is going to get a defense that he can actually really exploit. I hope to God, for Rhett Lashley's sake, that he, starts doing a little bit more, opening up the playbook a little bit more. But just at the end of the day, I think just a little bit too much talent. We're not there yet. We're getting there. Tuck is coming.
Ross?
I got to be in a close game just like these guys do. I think that we pull it out. I think this is the now it might not be the defining win of Manny Diaz's career, but it can be at least starting off on the right foot of making something happen in back-to-back seasons. So I'm going 31-26 Miami, but I'll tell you what, if we lose this game and we lose it the ways we've been losing all of our other games, I will be legit pissed off.
All right. Well, I got Miami winning 38-35. You guys got me with the defense being bad. Our tackling is awful. So it seems like there's going to be a lot of points being scored. I'm curious how your kicking game is. I guess ours is good so far. Our punting game is amazing. But I think it's going to be a game-winning field goal by Miami to win the football game. And I think we're going to put up points. I think Michigan State is going to put up points as well. And Miami's tackling is going to be so bad that Kenneth Walker is going to rush for 100 rushing yards or more. And your run game is going to take off because it's really bad at tackling.
Hey, I'll say this too. I think Cam Harris goes for over 100. And before the fourth quarter.
Really? Okay.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you, I've the way he's being utilized this season, I think it's somewhat criminal. I really like him as a running back. I've seen it change, and now that Chaney's out, which sucks because he was starting to make plays, and he's a kid that really I hope gets some run time next year when he comes back. Yeah. I'm thinking Cam Harris, man. I think this is his time to shine, and I think this is the right setup for him to get over 100.
All right. Well, let's find out what happens Saturday at noon, and I hope everyone's right. All right. Thanks again, Justin, Stu, for coming on. Greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.